So welcome to our launch event. Thank you for joining us and coming all the way to the Duffel offices. Traffic wasn't that great this morning. It's an understatement. So thank you for coming. So launch of Drata. Before we're going to talk about Drata, first of all, there's a Drata team here. Meet Josh.
Yeah, hi, nice to everybody. So I'm Josh. I look after the partners across Europe for Drata. Been here about a year now. Things are moving pretty fast, and Stan will testify to that. But yeah, so good to see you all. Obviously, feel free to grab me anytime. Nice to see you all.
For a talk, grab him for a talk or a drink.
Yeah.
Then we have Andreas.
Hi everyone. I sell it. Short and sweet. I sell it. That's what I do.
Everybody, I'm Akello. I lead our global channel partnerships team. So looking forward to meeting everybody, and I appreciate you all being here.
All right, and thank you all for joining us and people online joining us today. So our launch event. For those who don't know me, my name is Stan Vanhoff. I'm the manager of technology at Exclusive Networks. Almost 7 years now at Exclusive. More than 10 years in IT security. My main focus is, like today, focus on new emerging technologies and sometimes evangelizing the channel. Because if we have new technologies, people need to be aware of that, and that's where we focus on. I'm not alone doing that. Together with my colleague David Mitz, we actually form a duo, and we focus on everything new and emerging. A new vendor, why? We already have a great portfolio. We have the best of classes. We have the platform players. All you know them all, like Fortinet and Palo Alto. But it's going very fast. With that digital transformation, we get a lot of new attack vectors. Although Belgium isn't that fast usually, we see a lot coming from the States, and then we know in a few years it's coming to us eventually. Once I went to a keynote and the speaker said, European people are the one who didn't took the boat to America. So we're not that adventurous like those people in the States. So we look at new technologies and we wait a while and then we see, okay, we need that. Same with the new attack vectors. With our hybrid approach, cloud approach, we see all those attack vectors needs some different kind of tooling to protect us in that way. So that could be like the reason why are we signing up a new vendor. Another reason is we don't want to be the next Nokia. It doesn't mean that we have a great portfolio at this point, that at some point someone else will keep up or even be better than us. So that's why we keep reinventing ourselves. Because I think everybody once had this phone or some similar model. And who is a Nokia today? So we don't want to be the next Nokia. Another driver could be regulations. And that hits the sweet spot today. We have this compelling event, these two. And that's regulations. And regulations are necessary. I think maybe sometimes we have too many rules in our country. But regulations are necessary, and this actually proves my point. Still too small, so let's zoom in on that. These were search terms 2 weeks ago about headache. I looked, eyes hurt. We get a peak. Who knows which event took place in the States a few weeks ago? It's a solar eclipse. People still looked into the sun. So we need regulations to tell people don't look into the sun. And it sounds ridiculous, but that's the thing we need in IT and security for. So anyway, we use this as a guiding model in our road to new technologies. It's a zero trust maturity model. It's actually a great read from CISA, which it's an agency in the States. And we have these 5 pillars: identity, devices, networks, application workloads, and data. 5 very important pillars in that zero trust approach. And we already have a lot of different products in that space. In identity, of ITDR, we have SentinelOne, but also Silverfort. In the EDR, XDR space, we have Palo Alto, SentinelOne, Fortinet. With CNAPP, again, Palo Alto, but also SentinelOne. SSE, SD-WAN, we have Palo Alto, Fortinet, and Netscope. And data security, we have Thales, for example. So we already have a very good foundation here, or all the pillars is already in place in our portfolio. What we are lacking is this one, governance. And it's a foundation. It's a foundation necessary for a zero trust maturity model. Because if you don't have the right governance, you can have all, how do you say it, cowboys in our team that just goes along and do stuff, but that needs to be governed. And that's why we chose GRC as this is what we need in our portfolio today. With GRC and NIST 2, so NIST, not NIST, NIST with a T. NIST 2 is just released, and there are a lot of differences and nuances, but this is a major difference, and it's actually just the governance part. So the same 5 principles remain the same, but governance is there from the beginning to the end. And that compelling event, right? The compelling event of NIST 2. I think last week it was actually voted in the Senate, so it's coming. And we need some guidance into, okay, how can we be compliant for NIST 2? So that guidance is very important. So we're looking for a tool that can help us be compliant, but also guide us through that way. And this is the most beautiful part about NIST 2, third-party risk assessment or the supply chain check. It doesn't mean that your company now doesn't have or doesn't fall in scope to be compliant. You're going to work with a company who needs to be compliant. If you need to be compliant, you need to be compliant because they're going to check their supply chain. And when they're checking their supply chain, they're going to see you as a risk. You need to prove to your customer or to your supplier or wherever in the chain that you are actually good in what you do. And you have to show that proof that you're well protected. So this ones make sure that actually the whole entire market is impacted, not only the ones who fall in scope. And then the communication to your suppliers, to your customers, that you're actually a trusted source because you have you can present your evidence that you're protected. And compliance, most people think about legal and boring stuff, but we're certain that we can make compliance sexy again. So that's our motto of today. After this session, you're going to say, okay, compliance can be interesting, can be sexy. So this is our one slide that our account managers are going to use to pitch, but instead of using just the one slide, I think it's very important that we hear a full story. So today, Andreas is going to do the pitch of Drata, and after that, Jonas is going to talk about how we actually use Drata ourselves. So we are one of the first customers, I think, in the region also, that actually needed a tool. And then that's why how we tested Drata, and that's when our conversation started to actually be a distributor of Drata. So Drata is the next generation of automation, and now I'll leave it to Andreas. I don't know how to switch the information.
Oh,
sorry. Switch.
Oh yeah, that's the better way. That's the better way to do it. Just click it backwards.
You know how much.
How long I'm going to talk? For the next 3 hours, I'm going to share everything.
Sharing right screen.
Do we know that everyone online can see this? I presume so.
That's good.
No, perfect. Thank you, Stan, for the warm introduction. I am indeed here today to talk about Drata. I'll try and keep it not too boring when it's about compliance and everything that's involved in this. As said, a brief introduction for the people who don't know me. My name is Andreas. I know I sound very American. I'm not. I'm from Steenenveld, so down the road over here. But I sound very American for this. I'm responsible for sales within EMEA here with a primary focus on the Benelux. That's me in Australia when I used to be happy. The name of this event was a little bit drink your own champagne under the idea that there's a best of breed tool, exclusive is using it themselves, and you should drink your own champagne. That immediately got me thinking on the line of it's only champagne if it's from the Champagne region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling wine. In the same way that it's only GRC automation if it's from the Drata region of SaaS. Otherwise, it's just sparkling spreadsheets. This is what a lot of people are doing in the market today. They come out with templates to say, here's a step-by-step plan how to become compliant. But you've never studied it. You don't know what the new regulation is for NIST 2 or DORA. You might not know everything that's involved within ISO 27001. You still have to go figure that out yourself. But now you have a nice spreadsheet that looks nicer and you can click a little bit. That's a better way of doing it. That's something we wanted to stop, and that's actually part of our origin story as well. As a quick agenda of what we're going to discuss today, it looks very long. It's only going to be about 20 minutes, 3 hours I promised at the beginning. But so we're really going to dive into what's the problem. I don't just want to sit here and say, and here's Drata, and here's my marketing slide, and we have pretty colors. Let's talk about what's the issue here. Why are people selling it? Why are they not selling it? Why are customers buying it? Why might they not be buying it? Really going into what is Drata? Why do we do it? Talking a little about a little bit about the GRC ecosystem and then passing it off to someone much smarter than myself, Eunice, to actually show how it works. A question to start to the room, and I would say to online, but I can't see any hands on there. Who here has ever run a compliance program before? Whether that's ISO, GDPR, SOC 2, anything like that. One person has raised their hands. I hope online someone's raised their hands in there. By that definition, the rest of the room has not run a compliance program before. So we're immediately seeing a problem here. There's a lack of expertise within compliance. If you haven't done something before, it's very difficult to sell it to someone, to push it as a partner, to be able to do things with it. Who here sells something related to compliance? Does anybody here sell compliance related things? I see a few hands up here. Can I ask what kind of services, tooling, or the like that you sell today?
Everything surrounding governance and compliance, the whole shebang.
Okay. And are these separate tools? Is this internal tooling you've built?
It's consultancy.
Okay. So consultancy. So then you have internal people who are compliance experts who go to the customers and guide them.
Indeed, ISO tools, lead auditors, implementers.
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like it's been quite an investment to get the right people with the right expertise internally to
Absolutely.
be able to sell these.
It is.
Yeah, it still is indeed, right? If you're a CISM or a CISP, you have 100% employment rate. Probably doesn't mean that you're the best employee that's ever lived. It means you have expertise that nobody else has, that very few people have. And so it's a significant investment on Orange Cyber Defense, I believe, to have this kind of team of consultants to build into there. But so you come in, it's more the consulting services than it is tooling or programs that you put there.
Tooling is like in automation. It's the next step.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason why
you're here today. Perfect, fantastic. All right. This then comes into why you're selling it is people are asking for it, right? This compliance help. Are there people in the room who get compliance questions? To the partners here, who here by show of hands gets compliance questions from their customers, right? That they ask, do you know NIST2? Do you know ISO? How can I use this? How can I use that? Who here's been in a webinar from another SaaS tool that claims they're helping with NIST2? I know you're all lying to me because every single vendor on the market today is doing a webinar that says, here's how Okta fixes NIST2. Here's how everyone else fixes NIST2. None of them are compliance tools, which strikes me a little bit odd in there. To come back to this, a big reason why partners sell compliance tools or don't sell compliance or sell these consulting services comes down to a lot of the effort and a lot of the pain. And it's not just pain the partners feel, it's also pain that the end customers feel. This is a bit of a word cloud of a lot of the issues that we see within compliance. One of the things that at Drata we did in the beginning as well, in order to see what's wrong with the market today, right? You see that it's complex, you see it's very manual. There's a lot of requirements, multiple stakeholders. There's a lot of awareness you need to build up, things about privacy, expertise, auditors, so on and so forth. Right? Just the fact that you need to talk to auditors alone is a reason that a lot of people don't want to go into compliance, because it's not always a fun conversation. But these are issues that aren't just for partners, they're also for customers. This is what people feel when they're going through compliance programs, and these are the issues that we try to solve. To sort of boil this down, at Drata, we've kind of broken it into 4 key categories. I'm not going to sit here and read through all of them, but it comes down to it that you can waste a lot of your own time, right? If you're doing it manually, if you're going to understand everything, read all the books, figure it out yourself, gather it manually, make your own interpretation, build up your own compliance program in 25 different Excel sheets. And you've done all that, and then you go into an audit, they walk in and they say, Stan, tell me about how your servers are doing. You say, oh, my Excel sheet has a green check mark right here. And they go, great. Show me a random date and a random server and show me proof that you're doing the right thing. It's going to make the audit more painful. It's going to be more difficult, more time consuming. If you have a worse audit, that's going to lead to potentially blocking your own revenue. Compliance today, very realistically, is a bit of a pyramid scheme in the fact that you have the very big players who say all of our little suppliers within NIST2 and the rest, they all need to become compliant. You now need to follow my rules or you don't have my business. I don't care who you are, but if one of the largest companies on the planet drops you as a customer, you're not going to be happy. So it's constantly running this risk. So if we can switch this time waste, if we can make the audits much easier, much more proactive and quicker, if we can open up those revenue streams, compliance goes from being a cost to a benefit to a company. It's not just a cost of doing business. It's a weapon that you can use in order to break open business, in order to build trust with your customers, not just as partners, but also as end users. Now, some of the common issues, I always think slideshows are the worst thing that I can show. These are screenshots from an Excel sheet. So next presentation, I will show an Excel sheet instead for everyone. I think that'll be more fun. These are just some of the common issues that people have with things such as ISO and GDPR. Going through your statement of applicability, understanding what's supposed to be in scope, what's supposed to be out of scope, understanding all of those steps. Doing risk assessments, doing a full risk management platform. My sister's a non-financial risk analyst for Accenture. She works with some of the biggest banks on the planet. She is one of a team of 100 people at some of the biggest banks who only manage individual risks and deciding what those mitigation plans are. Most companies I know don't have a team more than 3 people who are handling compliance. And they need to be handling all of these things for ISO as well. All right, things such as scoping your ISMS. If you look at GDPR, you have your ROPA you need to be doing, awareness, a whole host of other things. And these are just some of the top level topics that are going in there. And if some of this stuff looks like it's written in Chinese to you, that's the issue with compliance, right? Not having that expertise. And that's something we take away. So in comes Drata. This is our logo, by the way, in case that wasn't perfectly clear to start with. So Drata, who are we? What do we do? What do we help with? Drata, we are a GRC automation platform. Now that's a little bit of marketing terms in there. GRC, we all know, governance, risk, and compliance. Automation, we generally know. However, we sort of have 2 definitions for what automation means in this. One part of automation is the delegation and visualization of a compliance program. It's being able to break down a compliance program into the practical tasks that have to get done in order to make it a consistent and continuous process. So being able to automate that, being able to automate the visualization of your compliance, being able to say, oh, we're 90% aligned with ISO standards. We're 100% aligned with customer ABC's custom requirements that they want of us. That's one step. That's already powerful, but that's the easy stuff. The second part of automation is the continuous monitoring of security controls. So by this, what we do is we're going to connect to your tech stack. We're going to connect to your Azure environments, to your Sentinel-1s, to your Oktas, whatever it might be. We're going to pull configuration data. Based on that, we're going to run it through a series of tests. And we're going to determine whether you're compliant against specific controls within compliance frameworks. And in this automated method, we're gathering evidence every single day. So when the auditor walks in and asks Stan, can you show me March 3rd from this random employee all of their policies? Yes, I can. I can show you exactly when everything happened. I can show you exact outputs from a computer. There's no interpretations. There's no taking screenshots, building something together. It's fact. It's a source of truth for an auditor. And that's actually what we do in a very high level. A fun thing about Drata that I always like to talk about is that we are a purpose-built tool. We are not a commercially built tool. Now, what do I mean by this? We come from San Diego. We come from quite close to Silicon Valley, where everyone said, oh, and there's money abound and the streets are paved in gold. And someone says, I have a SaaS idea, and they start throwing money at it. That's not what happened with us. Our co-founders had another company, and they needed to be compliant to do business. They said, you have to go get SOC 2 or we're not going to sign a contract. So we looked at the market and we said, okay, how the hell are we going to do this? Do we bring in a consultant? No, that's expensive and that project will drop after 3 months. Okay. Do we go figure it out ourselves and become compliance experts? No, we have other things to do. We have better uses of our time. Okay. Should we look for another platform on the market? And we looked at other platforms on the market and nobody was automating enough or providing the right level of support. So we decided we're going to build it. It's to the point that Drata is an acronym. Drata stands for Daniel, who is our co-founder and CTO. Daniel really automates the audit. That's what Drata means. It was an internal tool. They said, we're going to go build it because we need to figure it out. So they did. So we built this, became SOC 2 compliant, signed that contract. And then when they were talking to a venture capital fund, they said, hey, can we see your SOC 2? So we showed this beautiful SOC 2 report, very few issues on it. He said, how did you manage this? I said, oh, we built something internally. Daniel automated the audit. I went, oh, I know about 50 companies that need this tomorrow. And then we started selling it. It wasn't we saw an idea, got a lot of money, and then said, let's go squeeze out the market. It was we did it. We built it all inclusive in what we needed. And that's what the market needs now. So that's actually how we got started as a company. Now with time, we've become the most well-funded in all these beautiful marketing terms that I'll show you in a second here. But essentially what we're going to handle from Drata is the process and procedures for compliance. So you can think as simple as your policies and personnel, managing the changes of policies, material changes, version histories, all the boring things that auditors ask for. Seeing the compliance stature of every single employee within your company, all the way up to individual controls, customized testing against your infrastructure, against your identity providers and the like that you're in there, all the way to automatically auditing these things, managing your internal and external risks through automation, and AI if you want to use that as well. All the way down to what we call Trust Center, and this is something we'll show as well, where you can use all of this information and showcase it publicly to people. Say, hey, we are this compliant, come look. You don't need to come ask us. You don't need to ask Stan so that he can ask his boss, so that he can ask his boss for the right documents that he can send. It's all going to be in one place, so things speed up. Just the Trust Center alone, our internal testing showed about a 50% increase in business win rates and in speed of closing business, just by using this. By saying, hey, I know you're going to ask due diligence. Here's all the info. This is all the technological part, and this is nice. But what I said at a point where we were addressing the market, or we were stress testing the market, was no one was providing the right level of support. Now, I started this by asking who's selling compliance stuff, why not, and it all came back down to expertise. So what we did is we looked at the market and we saw, okay, we asked, who am I getting to help me when I buy your tool? They said, oh, you're getting someone like Andreas. Now, I love myself. I have very good self-confidence, in case you can't tell. I love the sound of my own voice. But if you ask me what kind of evidence the auditor is going to ask for and how to prove it, I don't have a clue, right? If you ask me, hey, how can Drata best do this in this specific audit on this specific question that they have, I'm going to tell you, click on the blue button, right? That's as far as I can go because I don't have that expertise. And that's what everyone else was doing. So what did we do? We hired a massive team of ex-auditors and compliance experts who make up our customer success organization. So the help that you're getting from a team isn't a technical help. It isn't a person who's saying, click on the blue button. It's a person who says, hey, what's your plan for your compliance program? How do you see this evolving over the next 3 years? What other frameworks are you going to be adding to it? Because that way we can shape it a little bit more in order to not duplicate work, in order to align to your goals of compliance, as opposed to just saying, how can we get you to click more of our buttons faster? So you have that expertise built in, who's there to help you from project planning all the way to past auditing. We've even aligned with some of the biggest auditors on the planet in order to make sure that they like what we're doing, that the way that we've prescribed it to people is correct. And by combining this human aspect and this technical aspect, this is how we're taking over the market. This is how Drata is currently the fastest growing, most well-funded platform in security compliance automation. Beautiful. Just numbers, I have to say some marketing blah, blah, because otherwise I get in trouble. And there's important people from the States here, so I'm careful. We have over $300 million in funding. Now, 300 million is a very nice number. We got our last round of funding in December 2022. I don't know if people remember what the market looked like in December 2022, but it was basically in a nosedive. And we still got this kind of valuation and this kind of funding there. You know, in 3 years, we're at 4,300 customers. We're at about 1,000 customers in Europe alone. We've launched over 20 different frameworks, and we have probably over 50 different custom frameworks that are supported, from ISO 9001 to a whole host of other ones that people just build and use Drata as Lego blocks. I even have people doing financial audits in here in the most analog way possible. But it's giving this flexibility to have everything you need as your source of truth for compliance. This also looks a little bit like an integrations list with some of the biggest names coming up in SaaS today. These are customers. These are the kind of customers that we work with as well as other fantastic names. Now, not to brag too much, even though that's kind of the point here, we are the market leader. We're young, and there was a question before we started here from, are you going to talk about competition? It's a bit tough to sometimes. In certain ways, there's a new competitor every single day. There's a new sparkling spreadsheet that comes up and says, oh, we're automating this. And realistically, they've just made that Excel sheet with a green GUI or a purple GUI or a yellow GUI. And they said, that looks fantastic for everyone. We're the true market leader. In 3 years, we're the first ones to have our own SOC 1 and SOC Type 2 reports. So if you look at the market of compliance automation and they're not fully compliant themselves, what does that say about their tool? We use Drata ourselves before we even launch. A bunch of the other stuff, I'm not going to go through all of it, but there's incredibly important things in here for compliance programs, trust centers, internal risk management, workspaces, open APIs, audit hubs, and it just keeps going. This list is already old. I think we've released about 6 new things since this slide was made about 3 weeks ago that are also there to provide more value and automate more of compliance. Next to that, I don't know if there's many Okta users in the room here. Okta also produces a report every single year of the top security apps. In there, you see compliance, Drata is #1. There are a lot of tools on the market. None of them do what we do. We're #1, according to Okta, with over, 1.2 million users in just 3 years. That's built on there. And we have some good company on this list as well, right? Names like Jamf, names like Duo, Datadog, that's on here, Palo Alto, Splunk. Big recognizable names. And we're in there already in 3 years. Now, as much as I love talking about what Drata all does internally, there is stuff that also has to happen external in a compliance program. Think of things such as pen testing. Think of added services that you can provide around holistic compliance, finding gaps and being able to address those as a partner. Hey, we're seeing a lot of your risks have to do with firewalling. Maybe we should be replacing your firewall in here. We're seeing a lot of risks on MFA or authentication. Right? And this too, that's also a big topic. Okay, maybe we should change tooling there, but it builds a way forward. It's a way to add services to this as well. It's also, as mentioned, we work with some of the best partners in the world, from technology partners such as Azure, AWS, GCP, Okta. The list goes on and on. Also, some of the top auditors. In the region itself, companies like Securance, Brand Compliance, and a whole host of others that we work with as well, where we just align with them. We say, hey, do you like what we're doing? Because we'll adjust what we're doing if you think for an audit that's going to be more useful. So we're bringing this all together in a GRC ecosystem. That's why we need partners. We need more people to be able to provide a more holistic approach. We need to be able to tie into this to raise that bar, to raise trust across the entire market. That's why we're doing this. That's why day one, I reached out to Stan when I joined here and I said, hey, we need a good distributor. We need to be able to do this together. It just so happens that on the day that I called him, he said, hey, I just heard that we're looking into our own GRC. I said, great, this is a 2-for-1. And 2-for-1 it is, boys and girls, sales. Right? But that's what we're doing here. We're building this ecosystem together. Now, to bring it all together, we started with all of this, wasted time, painful audits, blocked revenue. What we're doing is turning it on its head and flipping it over. We're building business value. We're not just addressing, oh, you need to get ISO in the next 6 months. What we're addressing is increasing operational effectiveness. It's not wasting your own time. It's taking away that opportunity cost of saying, oh, well, I was chasing all this info for 3 weeks. Accelerating your revenue goals, it's gaining confidence in that audit, making sure that what you're doing is right, that you can satisfy your customer for the requests they have with NIS2 or ISO or whatever it might be. It's minimizing your own risks. The fun part of NIS2 is that if you're breached and you're found not compliant, the fines are personal. It's a big risk for a lot of personal wallets. Right? These are the things that we're bringing into the market. Now, that's been enough of blah, blah for me. Again, I love the sound of my own voice, but I'm going to pass it over to someone much smarter than myself. I'm going to give it over to Eunice to show a lot of it. Thank you very much. Only show the good stuff. Okay.
For the audience online, the image sounds good. It's going to fall out just for a few seconds.
Jak klindasseren? Ja, in die bij camera. A conference shot, ja. Ja, en de mic. Conference.
Is this sound working?
Joris, can you send me a WhatsApp? Is sound working? Steve is probably oh, was dat nu niet jouw stap? Waarom is dat ook niet?
You know you're not talking about it.
I was about to say, last house is in stone.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Overwhelming experience for them.
He's sitting in the office, I'm like, he's covering him, first, pacing around, yelling on his phone.
Well, sometimes he's not even calling anyone, he's just yelling, you know.
He's talking to him.
He's getting.
He's playing. Play and play.
Technology is useless. Through hardware, buy software. No, that's.
Big enough. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Yep.
Yeah, just build a virtual background.
Hi, sorry for the intermezzo. So my name is Younes, and I joined Exclusive last summer. And when I joined Exclusive, security division existed out of the CISO and then the Global Security Operations Center. So there was no one officially fully dedicated for GRC. And when I joined, I started the security strategy and governance team here at Exclusive. And so today I'm talking to you about my journey when starting up this team, starting this new function, how I dealt with GRC, what steps were that I took in the beginning, and then how I ended up using Drata for my own purposes. So I'll be going over our security vision and mission at first, our strategic objectives, our organization, then our GRC initiatives and tooling, and then I'll give you a short demo about Drata. So internally, within Exclusive, our vision and mission is aligned with our global organization's vision and mission, but focused on security. So our security vision is to have a continuous security mindset and to be a totally trusted partner for our third parties, our customers, our clients. And to be able to achieve this mission, we would love to avoid any business disruption, any data breaches, avoid cybersecurity incidents in general, and assure compliancy with relevant industry standards and regulations. And to do that, we have defined the following four strategic objectives. So you can see we want to implement a security governance operating model, assure a continuous group-wide security mindset. So this is referring to security awareness mainly and training. Improve our cybersecurity resilience and mature our incident response capabilities. And these strategic objectives together, they form our cybersecurity program. To realize these objectives, we have these two teams in security today. So we have our SOC team. They are focusing on security monitoring, on incident response, on vulnerability management. And we have the SSG team, or Security Strategy and Governance. We are focusing on GRC, Identity and Access Management, security awareness, and security architecture and design. Of course, like all IT and security teams, we have way too many resources in our team. So in the SSG team, we have about 3 people. In the SOC team, we have about 3 people also. So we have to do it with this amount of resources. We have to protect our whole company. We have to realize these strategic objectives. So obviously, we will need some help with automation, tooling, things like that. But a bit more about our initiatives. So this was one of the first initiatives that I took in hand. So implementing a risk-based governance. This enables these 2 strategic objectives. And the goal was to have an official risk methodology for IT risk, so that we can identify and manage risk, also reports on risk to our upper management, and establish a risk management committee, so that we can define our risk posture and also handle risk exceptions and accept risk with that there is an official body to deal with these kind of exceptions. So this was one of the first things I did. And the second thing was then defining the governance operating model. And in the end, this comes down to building out an ISMS, or an information security management system. We built our own ISMS, which is based on ISO 27001. And this will allow us to perform an internal audit, then find out the gaps, and go towards an ISO certification in the future. We are planning to do this in 2025. This will also allow us to have a more easy audit process. So we have a lot of third parties that come in here, customers or vendors that ask us, okay, what are your security controls? They want to do an audit. It takes half a day, sometimes a day, sometimes 2 days, to go over all the controls, provide evidence. And having this kind of certification, we can just go, look, someone already did it. This is a certification, leave us alone. And then finally, having this will also enable business or facilitate business with customers that have obligations to comply. Even though it's not necessary for us to comply, it will help our business. So these were the 2 relevant initiatives that I wanted to discuss here. For those who are, I think most of you know what an ISMS is, but basically it's a collection of, it's a framework of procedures, policies, controls to achieve confidentiality, integrity, and availability within your organization in the context of information security. In the end, it just means that you have a holistic approach throughout all your business processes, throughout your people, technology, to take into account security in all of these aspects. So to do this ISMS, developing it is one thing, but then staying compliant with it is another thing. It's even the development was already a lot of work, but of course you can get help from the outside, people who have done this before. But making sure that you are compliant and you are getting to that certification, you are doing your internal audit, all of this again requires a lot of resources, a lot of expertise, which I'm working with 3 people, so it's hard to maintain that because I also have other things to do, not just ISMS. So I was looking for a GRC tool to support me in that. My main things that I wanted from a GRC tool was first have a risk register, because when I came in, it was just an Excel document with all the risks and the impact and the residual risk. So it's an overview, but I would like to have it in a better way. And this also should help me with risk reporting. Then secondly, but most importantly, I wanted it to save time for me and for my people. One thing that takes a lot of time is just to have an idea about the controls that you have in your organization. What are the security controls that are in place? Are they still working? This is something, you need to have it for SMS. You need to be able to evidence it. And that's very time consuming. The security audits, I told you about it. Sometimes it can take up to 2 days that you're just in a meeting room with some people, providing evidence, asking people to take screenshots or give documents. And then also security questionnaires. Not everyone comes and performs the audits. A lot of people just send you a questionnaire and expect you to fill it in. It's taking a lot of time from my team. So this was the second thing I expected from my GRC tool. And then finally also to have trust page. Again, it just shows maturity towards management, towards customers, towards your peers. If you can show, look, this is what we have. These are the controls that are in place. Here is some evidence. If you want more, contact us. And so, yeah, this is what I was looking for. I think I looked at about 4 tools. In last September, and Drata was one of them because Steen suggested it to me. I compared it. I'm not part of the business, so I was quite objective. But even after objective comparison, we ended up with Drata. Next slide. The main points for me compared to other tooling were the ease of use. Sleek user interface. It's always nice for users that you don't have an old clunky web platform. The automation. So when I was talking about controls and making sure that they work, here they have automated testing for controls, automated evidence gathering from controls by integrating with other tooling and just fetching the configuration. But then also very important, the fully featured single platform. So a lot of tooling that I checked out were tooling that have existed a long time and they have just added compliance features on top of it. But you can see that it's not really integrating, it's not really working well together. While in Drata, you can really see the difference that it's built from the ground up to do these things specifically. And then after I started using it, I also noticed that customer support and the customer success is really, really nice. They really try to help you out. They sit together with you, ask you what you want to do. And they in project planning, they help you. They make sure that you get to your goal. So these were for me the things where Drata stands out. That's all I had for this part. I don't know if there's any questions before I start with the demo.
What other platforms did you evaluate?
I checked OneTrust. I checked
Jupyter 1 or something?
Jupyter 1. Commugen and ISMS Online. I checked out. But yeah, like ISMS Online was really focused on more the administration part of ISMS. Jupyter 1 was also going into some automation, but then lacking on other sides. Commugen was a bit, was very complicated to use. And OneTrust, that's the platform where I found like it's just things that were bolted on, but it's not really
correct.
not really one single platform. All right. Any other questions? Delta. So this works.
I feel like we need wait music in between.
Some
elevator.
All right. So this is Drata. If you log in, this is what you see. The quick start is very helpful to start, obviously. First time I logged in, I just saw, oh, there's a bunch of tasks I need to do. Note that I have not completely set it up yet. I'm still in progress. You can see here, I still have a bunch of things to do. But they really guide you in what you need to do to get started, to get most of your controls set up, to have all your policies in there. So they are really guiding you in the setup. There is a dashboard also. You see your readiness for different frameworks, policy status, vendor risk, information about your tests. But what I want to talk about, so this is your control list, and you can see here Drata, they are using their own control identifiers, but they are always mapped to, you can see here ISO NIST. So they have a mapping with all of these different control frameworks. And you can basically see this control, I have a green check mark, this control, I have a red cross. So this shows you can filter. These are all the controls that I have set up now and that I know that I comply with. This information is then used to map to your different frameworks. So these are the frameworks that I'm using. I'm interested in Cyber Sentinel because Belgium, GDPR, ISO 27001, and then this CSF. We have more controls than that. Again, that's because they are not set up. I'm hoping we're somewhere here for most of these frameworks. But bit by bit, I'm making sure that these tests are working and that the mapping is correct, so that I can have a correct view on what the gaps are for me to be able to achieve full compliance with ISO, with NIST CSF.
So next year, everything is green. If we do this again,
Of course, everything is 100%, and there'll be even more frameworks in here. NIST, DORA, ISO 42000.
So I showed you the control list. This maps to your frameworks, but the next thing is also very interesting to see. These are tests. So for most controls, you have automated tests. You can see cloud infrastructure, system access control. So a lot of these are policies because these were the easiest to upload. But there are also regarding MFA on identity provider, SSL certificates, blah, blah, blah. So all of these things are tests that Drata is just continuously doing and then telling you, look, this configuration is okay, you have passed the test. As soon as it changes, if MFA is disabled, for example, you will no longer comply and you will be able to see it.
Could you maybe click on one of the failed tests and show it?
Yeah.
I have questions too.
Yeah, so that's quite a this one. That's test for cryptography policy has failed because I did not upload a cryptography policy.
Maybe if you can show one that runs against something like infrastructure identity. Yeah.
This one. Cloud data storage exposure failed. It appears you have no publicly exposed cloud data stores. Controls. Then
No, this one doesn't have a fix now because of this. So what Eunice is showing here from a lot of the stuff is indeed these are the tests. So we run about 100 automated tests depending on what's integrated, and you can build your own custom tests. So you can decide in no code logic what kind of attributes you want to see, how you want these tests to look passing or failing. So what you see here with a failed test, if you can scroll up just a little bit, is all of these tests are quite agnostic. So you see MFA on infrastructure console. It doesn't specify Azure, AWS, any of the other ones. It's just saying infrastructure console. So it's using the native APIs to test this. You can see what the test description is. We test standard every 24 hours, but you immediately see that it failed. So in the last test result, you see fail. So you know you're not compliant, right? Now we're talking about expertise and time investment in staying compliant. You know you're not compliant. Under there, you see there are infrastructure accounts without MFA required. Okay, so you know why. You go under and you see all of the accounts and all of the places where that happens. If you scroll up a little bit more, you see all the places where this is happening. So you've already identified where all of your non-compliant areas are. And then below it in this one, you see take action and fix now. It says that's what you need to do to fix it. Now, this is one of the tests that we can automatically fix within Drata. There are other tests that we can't because we tend to use read-only APIs. It could be that Eunice doesn't have the mandate or the access in order to change certain things within the Azure environment, within a single sign-on, within something. For that, he can very easily make a ticket by integrating it in here and saying, okay, Stan is the one responsible for this. I'm going to give him a ticket that immediately says what he has to do, why he has to do it, and by when he has to do it. Stan now has the immediate task that he has to do from a compliance perspective so that everything is tracked internally in order to see these things. And this is what we do with every single test every single day. Now, again, these are the prescriptive ones, but you can build whatever test you want. I only want to see servers that have 1, 2, 3 in the name for whatever reason. That's passing. That's what we do for naming. Or I want to break it down by geographic region or whatever it might be. You can build all these tests in a way you want to. If you have customers or partners who are asking you for very specific tests and information, great. Build it in the create testing. You can easily select which attributes you want to see, how it should look. And it's then building a watermarked timestamped PDF for the auditor. Could you maybe go to one of the failed tests and go to the raw evidence? If you scroll down on here, see raw test evidence. So what we do is we actually pull JSON information out And then we automatically parse that into passing and failing. So if you just want to click on one of those, and then if you can, oh, you have email PDF. If you just show raw evidence up left of that under response. Oh, too large display. Great. What it'll come down to is it's a JSON output that's already been put into passing and failing. So you can immediately see why you passed the test or why you failed the test. It'll locate every instance the way that we saw it in the nicer GUI, but this is the technical output. This is what the auditors want to see. When they come through and they go, hey, talk to me about your MFA, your infrastructure MFA. Show me random server on random day with MFA on it. This is the kind of information they want to see. They don't want you to say, yeah, I did it. And here's a screenshot that's missing half the information in it. And Bob was sick that day, so he missed that day and all of that. This is that information every single day, and it's filling in information into all of these controls. Is that clear? Any questions on that? Sorry to take over.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, those were controls, the frameworks, the monitoring, and all of this together then feeds into the audit hub. So the audit hub, you can just, if you have security audits, you can create an audit, you can grant access to an auditor. He just gets access to the platform. He can see an overview of all the controls that you pass and that you fail. He can request that evidence. He can request the policies that you've uploaded, everything that he needs in order to be able to evidence that you are indeed complying with these controls. And this is where this will save you a lot of time during security audits, as long as you have set up all of the tests and have uploaded your evidence there. You can just give out links to this information to different auditors, and they can enjoy themselves. And if they still have questions afterwards, they can contact you. But at least most of the work is already done by the tool. So that's the compliance part. Then for the risk part, you have your risk register here. Any risk that you have, you can give a title, you give a description, you can add categories, you assign it to an owner. You have your assessment, impact likelihood. You note down your treatment, the residual risk, and then you can create tasks for follow-up. So if you have a task to be done by someone, you just create a task. You say, look, to mitigate this risk, I need this policy to be updated, or I want you to implement this control. You assign that task to an owner. He gets a message just seeing that, okay, I need to do this in order to comply with that. And this task is just in your task list here for further follow-up. So then you can just follow up all of your tasks that you still need to do.
You have some overdue one.
These were just tests.
Nice.
That's the count.
It's not operational yet. So that's basically how you can use this. It's pretty straightforward. You also have your default risk library here that is mapped to different controls. So if you don't want to invent your own risks, you can just see if there are relevant risks in the risk library that you can use. And then you have your insights. So you can see your progress. You can see which risks still need treatment compared to your risk posture. Here you have an overview of your risk posture. You can see your category breakdown. So we now have our SMS and AI risks that we uploaded here. You see your heat map. You can just click on them to see more information about them. So all very, very easy and very straightforward. You have your policy center. So these are just policies that you can upload here. They are maps to controls, and they can be fetched by auditors as evidence. You can also force all users to acknowledge these policies. So in personnel, you can see all the users of your company, and you can basically say, this is a check that should be monitored, and I want everyone to acknowledge this, and this policy. Because for some, you will only comply if everyone acknowledges and has read that policy. So this is something you can do in that platform as well. You can also create custom policies. For example, personal data management policy I did not upload yet. but then you can say start building. And for every policy that you don't yet have, Drata basically suggests a pre-made template for that policy, which should cover everything that you need to have in such a policy. But yeah, they still allow you to edit and customize it to your liking. I think in some other policies, let me check. Look, so here they even highlight where you still need to change or customize things in order to make it your own. So it's really helping you to be compliant and to create all the content that you need for your ISMS.
There will still always be questions. Policies is one of the biggest issues with compliance. People say we're going to start ISO and here's 30 policies we need to understand for our own organization. This is a big part where our customer success team helps out a lot as well. So in the top right corner, you'll see a button that says live with 3 smiling faces. And you have 2 options there, help with using Drata, which is someone to tell you which buttons to click. And you have the one under it, which is I have compliance and auditing questions. This links you into our customer success team of ex-auditors and compliance experts. Now, this is a chatbot that gets you to a human being. Our typical response time globally is under 10 minutes. During our peak working hours, and that's when there's overlap between the US and the EU team, we have an average response time of under a minute. From a person with compliance experience sitting there who's connected to your account to provide you information and insight about that. It's not an AI chatbot that's saying, hey, we think you should write ABC in there that hasn't been tested and validated anywhere. It's a human being who has done this before, who has run programs before, that can give advice. Now, as a partner, if you're fully managing this, it could be that you're the ones talking with them. So if you need to handle something for your customer and you don't have that expertise, God, wouldn't it be useful to have an entire team of people who know all of these things and can answer the questions for you so that you can save your own margins? That's a big
Isn't
part.
that a huge opportunity for partners who have managed services offerings or just service engagements? A lot of our customers generally have challenges with policies, and so we have a leverage a lot of our partners and plug them in to help with their policies. So there's a huge opportunity here from a partner perspective to build programs or service engagements around this.
Yeah, because we didn't mention, but it's completely multi-tenant.
Yeah. What's also good to know, just from a, let's call it due diligence perspective, compliance. We have full EU data residency and multi-tenancy. So we're hosted in Germany and in Ireland for failover, as well as in our multi-tenancy, it's all private databases. So every single customer has their own private database. We don't use anything shared, which you think sounds like a bare minimum for compliance and security, but we're one of the very few who leverage private databases. There's also aspects in here as well. What we didn't cover with vendor risks in there as well. You can manage your third-party risks out of there as well by sending security questionnaires. We have AI that is trained specifically on your private database that can help with identifying issues within these vendors and third-party risks. Where you'll send it out, they'll provide a response, and we'll say, here's a breakdown of all the issues in it. It's an opt-in. It's automatically shut off if you don't want to use AI, but there are potentials to do that. But it's important that everything is private database, that anything that happens is only yours. For MSSPs, we also have full multi-tenancy in there as well, where you can manage all of your customers out of one spot and see this, as well as being able to cross-map controls, risks, and evidence across these workspaces. So if you as an MSSP have specific things, you say, oh, we also want to do cyber fundamentals, and there are specific checks that we have, and they're great. You can build that in the system and share it across all of your managed customers in there as well, in order to minimize your duplication of work.
Another handy feature that I noticed while using the customer support was this here. So now I had a question and the remote support wanted access to this tenant. And you literally just flip a switch here. You say, okay, until the 26th, you can have access to my tenant, and then it's automatically shut off. So it's a very transparent way of the third party getting access to your tenant. One thing I also wanted to discuss here is the connections. So you can see these are the active connections. This is where a lot of these automated tests get their evidence from by linking with your existing tooling. So we are using Sentinel-1 EDR. We're using Okta IDP. We're using Azure for infrastructure, Intune for management. And so this is connected with all of these tooling. And it's through these connections that it will just read out the configuration and say, okay, you are using MFA on your accounts. You are forcing your endpoints to be fully encrypted, to have a secure password. All of these things, they are just fetched through the configuration and can be granted to auditors as evidence without you needing to take screenshots from the configuration. So these are the connections that I've enabled now, but there's a very long list of connections that you can have in here. You can see here the types. So for background checks, for digital signatures, EDR, single sign-on, your HR system, MDMs, security training, ticketing, user access review. This is a new feature that I noticed. I think it's since last week.
Turned on for yours, yeah.
Okay. And so this is basically fetching all of the applications that we are using in Okta, and you can just tell you can just do an access review for it. So you can assign someone, say, I want you, like the application owner, to review the access for this application. And he uploads the evidence, and then it's done. And again, this maps to a control and can be used by a security auditor as evidence that you are indeed doing access reviews, instead of either them doing it and not having any evidence, or having to give you an Excel of everything that they reviewed. So again, it just facilitates this process, and this is also something that a lot of security audits, they will request this. And finally, I want you to show the trust page. Again, it's not yet published, it's not yet finished. This is what we have now. So just to give you an idea, you can publish policies. So things we would publish here is like a privacy policy, responsible disclosure policy, things like this. You have your continuous monitoring. So these are the tests, the controls that you have in place and that you are succeeding. You have your processors, so your third parties, and then privacy. But I also opened the Drata Trust page to give you an idea how it could look. So this is also, once we are complying with some of these frameworks, we can show these badges like, okay, we are ISO compliant, we are GDPR compliant, Cyber Essentials compliant, NIST CSF.
But what's good about this as well is you'll see the little lock symbols next to all of them as well. So we're saying we have them, but you can request. So what happens is, when I'm selling to, like when I was talking to Eunice, I said, you're going to have to do this due diligence. So he was asking me for information. I said, great, here's trust.drata.com. And he clicked on a whole load of things and he said, continue. He put in his name and information, and he got sent a non-disclosure agreement via DocuSign. They then signed it, and then they got access to these policies and these reports, certificates, whatever it might be, in order to see what was actually in there, as opposed to just seeing we have it. A funny trend that we do see with a lot of our customers is they set this up and they say a surprising little or few number of people ever click on this or ever actually request anything. Because most companies, what happens is you send this to someone and they go, damn, they're more compliant than we are. I don't need to click on anything. And that's a funny thing that happens, where the more you set it up, the less you actually start getting asked as well, because you're already showing these things ahead. Another good one you can show, if you can go to trust.vectra.ai.
Vectra?
Yeah, does anyone here use Vectra? Vectra NDR? Do people here know Vectra NDR? Okay. So Vectra is a customer of ours as well, based out of the States. I only found this out a few weeks ago as well. Vectra is growing quite rapidly within Belgium. They also have a trust center hosted by Drata, which looks similar. Here you can see theirs with announcements, the kind of tests they have, or the frameworks that they have supported, their security testing policies, sub-processors, and other things in there as well. Right? So this is, their salespeople have this in their email signature at this point, saying, hey, this question is going to show up here. It's already done.
That was all I had to say. I don't know if there's any specific questions about the platform or about anything that we discussed.
Speak about test pass and fail, what methodology is used. It's based on specific framework or so.
Yeah. So our tests are the let's say the pre-mapped tests that we have. They're based on generally accepted best practices within. Right. So what that means is, let's say it's something checking encryption types on servers. ISO doesn't care which encryption type you use. They care that you are encrypted. Right? So our test, what it's doing is it's checking the infrastructure, checking your configurations, and understanding, are the things encrypted. Right? So we're a compliance tool, not a security tool in that way. So those are the kind of things. Now with customized testing, if you're able to go to the monitoring section and click on create test. So we have a lot of pre-map ones they're meant to be broad enough to cover multiple frameworks, multiple controls in there as well. What you can do now is what we call adaptive automation, where you can build your own tests and you can decide everything that you want to. So in this case, it's connected up to Azure, for instance. Today, it's only on infrastructure, but it's something that adaptive automation, there you see it. It's something that we're rolling out to broader and broader. And you can select different resource types and say, okay, my SQL databases, for instance, or virtual machines, there's attributes that I want to see in here. You can choose any of the attributes that are listed in there, and you can determine what you want to see. I want this attribute to not equal ABC for whatever reason. I want my test to show as a pass if this happens or a fail if this happens. So in no code logic, you can kind of set up anything that you want in here in order to build that automated evidence. So everything that comes out of here, when this test runs, the information that's provided out of this will be presented in a watermarked timestamped PDF with that JSON output as well, that even shows the logic you've built in here. So what you can do, and what we're doing more and more of, is we're closely linked with auditors. So we ask the auditors, or if a customer's asking the auditor, we introduce them and say, hey, can you look at this custom test and determine from your auditing expertise, is this the right way to provide evidence for them in a customized manner? And they'll say yes or no, because we can see the logic for this and that reason, or they might adjust it. So this is a way that you can not just customize more internally, but a very easy way to make your customers happy. They probably have very specific requests where they go, hey, we know that you're hosting all of our data and this sort of thing, or you're using AWS AI services or something. We want to see specific information. We can't cover every test by ourselves, which is why we've launched this, in order to be much more data-driven as opposed to, let's call it template-driven. Does that answer your question? Any other questions? Yeah.
So the connections, how do they gather on-premises data?
Yeah. So for on-premise systems, we have multiple ways of gathering evidence. One, we have a very robust REST API. So if you want to connect things via API, even using on-premise systems, whatever it might be, in order to gather evidence from that is a way of doing it. There's ways to do it with, I'm going to say, general scripting to pull the information that you might want to pull out of there as well. An issue with on-premise systems as well is sometimes people don't want us to have any access to them, right? Where they say they're fully on-premise. Something you can do as well is, if you can click on evidence library for me, there's always going to be, there might always be evidence that you can't automate or that we can't automatically pull in. What you can do in evidence library is upload any kind of evidence that you want to. So this can be bulk uploads, this can be files, this can be whatever, and connect those to controls. If you click on source there for me, Eunice, on source, one of the interesting things here is you can also use URLs, which means that often something we're seeing, and that we have a few use cases in Belgium going on right now, is they say we don't want financial information to leave Belgian soil or our internal company system. So what they do is they put it on a URL in their own internal systems, but this URL they then link to controls. So what happens during the auditors, the auditor sees financial controls, whatever it might be. Instead of us having that data in Germany hosted on us, they get access to that URL. They can click into your system, which might be on-prem or some way in order to view those, and then still have the required evidence without needing to put it on our side. So this is something on-premise systems, in very short, it's going to be a little bit more manual because they're on-premise systems, but there are multiple ways or multiple roads to Rome for that as well. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's not completely clear because it's a SaaS solution, right? So if the customer would not allow any connections in, do you have a component that you install in the customer's network?
No, so we don't have an on-premise version of Drata today. So we don't have it that way. What sometimes happens if there are things that they will not allow any kind of connection, that they say this is fully air-gapped, fully off, that's a discussion, honestly, to have with an auditor, where you realistically couldn't put it into anything that's a SaaS-based tool. If that's the part on there, that would be a request for the auditor to understand what's the best way that we can provide evidence to this. Again, coming back to the URL proof, that is something that we've often seen that is allowed in a lot of cases. We're doing some business in Luxembourg in the financial services industry. That's one where they say it's got to stay in Luxembourg and we want everything on-prem. That's one of the things they've done there, where essentially they've set up their own on-prem server. They've said, okay, we have a gated URL for this. Here's that information. The auditor can see it's linked to that control. We can fulfill that control, but we're not giving anyone access except for the auditor.
But you can upload evidence through the API also.
Yeah. As well, it comes back to if it's allowed, for whatever reason. It could be legal reasons. Mostly within the EU, we see that most countries now allow it to stay within the EU, which is why we have EU data residency. So there's multiple things. It's one of those tricky cases where sometimes it's best that we bring in an auditor. And it's why we connect the auditors a lot. We've also introduced one of our biggest global auditors here to Exclusive in order to say it would be a very nice, I'm going to say perfect triangle to work together, auditor partners or auditor channel and Drata in order to have all that together. Because at the end of the day, a lot of times what we see with customers is, with all due respect to them, what they think about it does not matter. What the CISO of whatever company thinks about our tool really doesn't matter. If their auditor is happy with it, that's what matters. Right? It's the end result that's more important than saying, oh, I like the blue of Drata better than the green of somebody else. It's more, what's the auditor going to prefer? That's oftentimes something that really gets one business moving, but also is something that's important too. Does that clarify a little? Does that give a little bit more of a clarity to your question?
Can you create a custom connection?
Yep. So we have REST API. If you can go to developer.drata.com, I think it's called. We have a website with all of our development stuff on there as well. Part of our customer success team is also solutions architects that are part of that as well. We won't build it for you. This is something that it's why we have a partner network as well. But you can build this as well. So we have one partner in Belgium currently who's already connected it to a few of their standard tooling that they sell to customers in order to do that. So we have a full API documentation, the kind of things you can do with it based on REST.
Thanks a lot.
No problem. Any other questions? Is this the best thing you've ever seen?
Yes.
Yes, I'm gonna pay him later.
All right, so if you still have questions, you can always send an email or just talk to us for persons who are here. The theme of today was drink your own champagne and not eat your own dog food. So we prepared some champagne.
Oh, not dog food?
No dog food. So hopefully it was interesting. I think it's interesting. If you have any questions, please do talk to us. The team is here. If you're online, just send us an email. You know how to find us. And thank you for joining us today.